recording. And welcome to Bizzapalooza Blab, hashtag Bizzapalooza Blab. Yes, I am here, Ivana Taylor, producer of Bizzapalooza, and I am here with Mike Kawula. Am I saying that right?
Koala like the bear.
Koala like the bear. And I'm Ivana like Ivana, you can say it. Koala like the bear. Eva's here, our guest from before. Welcome, Eva. David's here, Mike.
David.
And another really good friend of mine this is a favorite topic for her is Donna Cravata. She is with Social Sage PR, and she does some awesome work using social media in a really, really powerful way. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her, and I'm hoping that we can bring some people in the chat today. I want to begin, Mike, by introducing the topic. We had a hell of a discussion last Thursday about how to market your content on Twitter, so much so that we are going to talk about it in depth today. Okay, and we have a question already from Howard Wolpoff. I don't know if he's here, but he was here earlier, and he was in the accelerated class because he asked the question. I don't know if you can see it since you're the co-host. Do you see it?
Yes. What is the best way to promote articles?
Yes. What is the best way to promote articles? If I click on that, is it going to show? There it is. What is the best way to promote articles? So that's really a great start to our conversation today. Let's talk about what do you mean by marketing content on Twitter, and what does that look like for you?
Okay, so do you want me to jump in and kind of answer his question first, or?
Yeah, you can answer his question. I think my question's sort of around that as well.
Yeah, so I think first it's got a lot to do with, your audience, right? So who are your followers? So you need to have relevant followers to have them engage with your content. You also need to be making sure that when you're sharing your content, that you're using hashtags around that audience. So for instance, I'll use myself as an example, and then, if Howard's in, maybe later on, you can open this up and everybody can jump in and we can look at their Twitter profiles. But, because I think real life examples is what will help everybody a little bit more. But, I know for us, startups are very active users of my tool. So, for me, I use the word startup when I go into Twitter advanced search and I'm looking for the right types of people to connect with on Twitter. The word, Mixergy, for instance. Mixergy is a startup podcast. It's a great podcast. I use Mixergy in advanced search and start looking for people who are having conversations around Mixergy. Why? Because I know they're very relevant folks who will more than likely want to use my tool. But besides that, I love talking to startups. I know a lot about, various different industries based on past successes and many past lessons that I've had. So I love to just jump in and have conversations with those folks. So, to answer his question, I think, you need a relevant audience. And when you have that relevant audience, if you're sharing good content that speaks to that audience, that's when folks are going to obviously click on that link, whatever that link may be, and we'll go over that in a moment, and bring them back to that piece of content that you wrote. I think it's real important for everybody here that you have a pinned tweet that really speaks to your audience. For me,
people don't use pinned tweets very, very well. I have to admit, I've only recently started to leverage pinned tweets. Talk a little bit about that. What should you put up there as a pinned tweet?
Something that's going to speak to the type of audience that you're trying to attract. So again, for me, we talk to individuals who want to have, a larger Twitter following, right? So I have a piece of content. It's an email opt-in for an ebook that speaks to that. And I know the types of folks that we're connecting with and that we're following on Twitter, that when they come back to see, oh, who is Mike Kawula that just followed me, they're going to do a couple of things first. And this is where I think it's, before we get into the advanced strategies, that's very important that we cover some of the basics. Like, before somebody follows you, a majority of folks who aren't auto-following, the types of folks that we really want to have in, relationships with on Twitter, they're first going to come and they're going to take a look at your Twitter bio. They're going to take a look at your Twitter cover. They're going to take a look at your profile. And then they're obviously going to be taking a look on your left-hand side on the link that's to your business, and then whatever your pinned tweet is. So those are the first few things that everybody's going to take a look at before they follow you. And I know based on, we've connected over 5 million people here at Social Quant. So I know, we have a lot of statistics that we look at. And one thing that we know for a fact is that the highest probability of somebody clicking on a link and visiting either a piece of content or your website is at that initial follow. And that's because they're coming to take a look at you and saying, well, who's Mike Koala? Who's BizPalooza? Why did they follow me? Let me take a look who this is. And now, again, for me, since I'm speaking to a lot of startups or people who want to, be better at Twitter marketing, if I have a piece of content that speaks to that person, they're more than likely going to click on that. But it's, in the beginning, you have to set everything up, I think, the right way. And that's why, for the pinned tweet, speak to whatever the type of audience is that you're trying to connect with. And I can tell you for a fact, and, we use a Bitly link. So you can take a look at anybody's Bitly link. So if you copy my Bitly link and stick a plus at the end of it, you can see my statistics, okay? And you can see the data and how many clicks I've had. And the clicks that I have just from that one pinned tweet on my personal profile is incredible. It's over 4,000, and I get, thousands of email opt-ins just from that pinned tweet each and every month.
So I want to bring up a couple comments here. David says, pin tweet is your elevator pitch to new connections who will come to check your profile. I think that is spot on. It's what you were just saying. And my friend Tim Barry, shout out to Tim. He is massive on Twitter. I don't know if you know Tim. Do you know Tim?
No.
Tim Barry, he hates it when I say this, but I've been following Tim Barry for more than 30 years.
That's awesome.
I've been a big fan of Palo Alto Software, and he's the founder of Palo Alto Software and LivePlan.
He was on the chat, I know.
He was on the chat, and he's blushing. But he has a really good, he has a question. He says, trade-off on good content for long-term versus what generates good short-term analytics. Is it either or? And
so where's he going with that, with the question there?
Yeah, where are you going with that? Should we bring him in?
Bring him in.
Let's bring. Do you want to come in, Tim? Yes or no?
As he's blushing.
Blushing. He's blushing. Well, if you want to come in, Tim, all you have to do is click on where it says Open Seat. There he is. And I'm going to let you in. Tim is a social media master himself. I hope you can get in there. I hope you can get in there, Tim. So, okay, great. So while he's doing that.
Yeah, so I can tell you, so just looking at my Bitly link right now, if you were to take my Bitly link and, again, stick a plus at the end, you'll see that I've had 4,941 clicks on that pinned tweet that we pinned at the end of October, the beginning of November. So that's just on my personal profile. On my business profile, we've had much more. So it's, it's a great way to drive traffic to, if you're building an email list, or, sometimes I switch that up and we'll do it to a current blog post. And then on our website, obviously, we have Facebook, remarketing pixel. So is that when somebody comes and visits a blog post, we'll then, retarget to them on Facebook to drive them to an email opt-in and then start into our series at that point.
So I have a question for you
Sure.
about this pin thing. I actually, I've done both. I've done, is he coming in? I think he might be coming in. Trying again. Okay, so I've done both. I've done an opt-in as well as like free content. What's your thought on what's better? Is an opt-in, opting into something that is relevant to your audience, is that better than a free piece of content, or does it not matter? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm a big believer in you have to build your email list. So, but again, you have to test everything out all the time, right? So, why not test both? For 30 days, I wouldn't say testing it just for a day or two. Either run a 7-day period or 30-day period and have, a pinned tweet to maybe an opt-in, and then a pinned tweet to maybe one of your most popular pieces of content, and see, which one's going to get more engagement from that standpoint. For us, we're always trying to build our email list. So, we'll get folks to come into our email through an ebook, will then share with them other pieces of good content and then offer them, the opportunity to take part in one of our free trials. For us, that works real well. I think, it looks like he's having problems getting in. So if somebody else wants to jump in, that's fine.
Okay, great. So we talked about that. I threw in a couple other questions. Why is Twitter the best place to promote your content? I know my friend Donna has answered this. She said it was her favorite platform. I'm scrolling back to see what she said. I love Twitter because it's an open platform without restriction. This allows you to listen and engage with just about anyone. Sharing your content on Twitter gives you the opportunity to be found by just about anyone. So what are your thoughts on why Twitter is such a great place to promote your content?
Well, first of all, Twitter is just such a great place to get anybody's attention, right? So direct messages have become really noisy, as we all know. So for me, sometimes checking my direct messages is very difficult. However, if I really want to speak with somebody, just at mentioning them, and I do this all the time with folks in the media, for instance, if I really want to, ask somebody a question or, comment, for instance, I think I've mentioned this before, and I don't know if we discussed this during the chat last week, but, I'm a big promoter of HARO, helpareporterout.com. So I love that tool. 3 times a day, reporters will send you an email wrapped up in HARO asking a question on, something that they're working on currently. I think it's a great way for us, if you're looking to get press, to, look at these and answer them. But I take it one step further. So if I see somebody from CNN or Forbes or Inc. magazine asking a question, not only do I answer it, but then I go to Twitter, will follow that reporter, will add them to a private list that I have of reporters that I'm interested in getting, social quant interviewed for. And then I'll start sharing their content on a regular basis, start commenting on their content. And then if I can answer any questions that I see, if they're on HARO all the time, I'll then message them and say, hey, by the way, I just answered that, question that you had, let me know what you think. And, that's gotten me on CNN, Forbes, Inc. magazine, and that's all through, obviously, the Twitter and Twitter lists, which I think is, phenomenal. Now, to tie that back into content, when you have a good audience, I think, and an audience then of influencers who engage with your content and get out there and share it. Like when, I've had, for instance, Kim Garst, who's obviously huge, 400,000 plus followers. When she shares a piece of our content, that gets me out into other people's audiences also. And again, that's all through, the power of Twitter, because you can really have great, discussions and relationships with people where you couldn't do that, I think, on Facebook or even LinkedIn. Twitter's live and people are checking their notifications.
I love that. And Donna says that's exactly what she does, and it works. So, you mentioned Twitter lists, and this was a hot topic on our chat. Is in fact, the last couple chats I've done, Twitter lists have come up as huge. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think people are really curious. I mean, we all have Twitter lists, but maybe we're not using them the right way.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I've used Twitter both from a local standpoint. I built, a 7-figure local cleaning company in South Jersey. I built a 10-figure online office supply store. And then now we have an international SaaS tool, right? So I've used Twitter to grow all of them. And I've always used Twitter lists because I really see a lot of power in it. So for instance, to tie it back to like a local business owner, when I used to go out and my managers would go and give an estimate to somebody for a house cleaning, we were doing, 40 of those a week estimates. For the 50% that we didn't close, we'd close 50 to 60% of them. For the other 40 to 50% that we didn't, if we could find them on Twitter, we would add them to a Twitter list. And this was called a prospect list. And basically what we would do is, every day the managers and on the weekend myself, we would just go to that list and start scrolling down it. And when we saw something applicable, like if, from a local standpoint, people use Twitter for real-time news, right? So they'd be tweeting out like a local high school football game or that they're at the soccer field with their kids. We would start engaging with them and, doing it in a sincere way. But what happened is that over, a 6-month period or a 12-month period, if they didn't choose us as their cleaning company, they would eventually, after 6 to 12 months of seeing us consistently engaging with them on Twitter, they would remember us and they would come back and, say, hey, did you still have that estimate? And next thing you know, they were signing on as customers. And that's all because, we stayed in front of them on a regular basis using lists. Again, before I mentioned I use it for the media. So I have different media folks that I want to get Social Quant interviewed by, and I constantly am looking at that list, engaging with them, and sharing their content, because reporters love it when you share their content. So that's another good thing that you can do. You can take your customers and put them in a list. And one thing I do want to caution everybody is that if it's for customers or prospects, make sure that you make those lists private.
Let's talk about naming lists, right? Yeah. Because you mentioned that, and this is so true, I don't really follow my direct messages. If you guys want to reach me, you can either mention me or email me or something, but direct messaging is really tough because it's so spammy. But one thing I really noticed is that adding people to a list really gets their attention, especially if the list has a cool name.
Definitely. It definitely does. And
I love that, right?
They do.
And to your point, you don't want to name your list, have a public list called prospects.
Exactly. It just, that wouldn't make sense. But you can even use lists just for your own personal stuff. So like for me, I have I've got 3 children, and on Sundays we're always, we're new to Florida. So we always try to find something new to do in the area. And I've got, just a list that's private of, different local, newspapers that talk about events going on, coupon sites, what have you. So, on a Sunday morning when, we sit there and we're like, what do you want to do today? And the kids always, give you that blank stare. I don't care. I could just pull up that list and right away start looking at cool things and hear about local events that are going on. So, it's just a great way to take a lot of that noise out, because I don't know about you, but I really don't go into my personal stream that often. I think I'm following 30 or 40,000 people, on my side. That's very noisy, right? And then there's some people that tweet every 5 minutes, automated. And if they're tweeting every 5 minutes, your news stream, you really can't look at it. So you really have to be organized, and look at it and say, here's my influencer list. I have a media list. I have a prospect list. I have a customer list. I have a personal list. There's just so many different ways that you can use it. But I do think that's important that we, clean that list on a regular basis, right? So if I have a prospect list, and they become a customer, I need to remember either myself or somebody else to go to that list and move them from prospect to customer. The same with, the media. I keep my media list very tight because, I'm cautious with how much content I share also from others compared to my content to obviously get traffic back to our website.
Was that you or somebody on it? It might have actually been Eva. Somebody I talked to recently said that they really keep their Twitter list down to 100 and under. So if your list gets beyond a certain point, becomes unmanageable, this person likes to clean their list. That was Eva. She likes to keep her list really, really tight. So I guess in her mind, if it goes beyond 100, that means that it's time to maybe create another segment.
I agree 100%. And 100, and it depends also on how active those people are inside of that list also, right? Because you've got, I have a couple of, I love growth hacking, so I'm constantly following it. And I've taken, I use lists also. So for instance, and I don't understand why a lot of bloggers don't do this, but if I see somebody create, and I've done this a lot, where somebody will create a list, the 50 top growth hackers, the 50 best bloggers, the 50 best podcasters, I'll have myself or, somebody that works for me go in and create a list of those and then share that out with the blog post. And then the blogger that wrote it or the podcaster or whoever it is will share my list. And that gets me out in front of other folks. And creating a list, I mean, people I subscribe to, a ton of lists that,
yes.
Make sense. But I'll also take people out of the list if I see them tweeting too frequently and they make it too noisy. So back to that point where Eva was saying, trying to keep it real small. If you've got somebody that's tweeting every 5 minutes inside of it, and if it's not the type of content that I want to see, which if it's good content, I'll take a look at it all day. But if it's just, promotional BS all day, I'm going to take them out of that list because I really want to, make sure that I'm seeing what's important to me.
Well, one of the things that you talked about in one of your articles is, and I love your articles. If you guys have not read Social Quant articles, you've got to check them out because, Mike, you just do an amazing job of pulling lots of great screenshots that prove your point. So you make a point, you put a screenshot on there. I love that.
We've got good writers.
Yeah, right. One of the shots you had, I thought it was yours, maybe it wasn't, is you talked about people tweeting a lot. But I think you had Jeff Boulas or somebody, and I've read this before, that tweets like 90 times a day or something.
A little bit more, yes.
A little bit more, right? So let's talk about people who are quality tweeting frequently.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because let's be realistic. If you're using Twitter to have a very big marketing impact, if you're so for us on Social Quant, we tweet once every half an hour. So, some folks could argue that that's too much. That also for me, I'll share with everybody, that gets us, we're going to have 35,000 visitors this month just from Twitter come to Social Quant. And I know what percentage of those folks will sign up for my free trial, and I know what percentage of those folks will convert into a paying customer. And those numbers are very healthy, and we're happy with them. So for us, it makes a lot of sense. But I've also tested when I've gone tweeting an hour. And so that's, 24 tweets a day. I've tested a half an hour. And I've also tested tweeting as aggressive as every 10 minutes, which is, Jeff Boulas is anywhere in between 10 to 20 minutes he's tweeting if you look at it. For us, it didn't make sense to be tweeting that aggressive because what I did is I look at my analytics, and we should all be, looking at our analytics all the time. For me, I look at mine almost every day. I'm a little aggressive with it, but I want to see what happened the day before. And, I look at it from a week standpoint. And I noticed that when I went down to tweeting every 10 minutes, that my follower growth is really important to me, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to be following. I still got, and we could all look at it, my clicks to my website were relatively the same. What happened was because I was tweeting so much, the growth in my followers was slowing down. And it wasn't because I wasn't getting more new followers, because I'm signing on, a ton of new followers every day on Twitter, obviously because of our tool. But what was happening is my churn, meaning people unfollowing me, became much higher because, I was obviously, probably annoying some of them in their stream. But you have to find that balance, right? So you mentioned before, we have good content. I spend, a lot of money on having writers produce good content for us that I know, people who are interested in Twitter marketing will find, a good read. And so we have hundreds of blog posts, and to share those out on a regular basis makes sense because it's going to drive the right traffic to our website. So I'm providing value, and if they want to use our tool, that's great, but they enjoy it. But I think it's looking at what's that balance, right? So for me, I found every half an hour is fine and it works well. When I went too much, it didn't work well. I think we all have to just look at it and say, what does our audience find acceptable?
So that prompts the tool question, because you've talked about two things, and I see a question from Donna, and I would love to bring her in too. But I want to talk about tools. I want to talk about what you're using to look at your analytics. And Donna wants to know how you're managing your Twitter lists. Yeah,
Twitter lists, it's funny because, I think when he was trying to join in, I had a conversation, I think via either Twitter or maybe even email, because, I'd love to learn more about people's pain points when it comes to Twitter lists, because it's something that Social Quant's possibly looking at, creating in the future to make it more easier to manage. It is a pain in the butt, I do have to say. So for me, I do most of it actually, in the native app of Twitter itself. I'm very active. Again, I told you on Twitter, you can, I'm tweeting like all the time. So, I'll be at my girls' cheerleading event.
And I tweeted you, right?
You what?
I bet you jumped into the room just as I tweeted you that
Probably.
I was open.
But it's like, I'm at my girls' cheerleading events on, Sunday. And, I remember just sitting in the back while I'm waiting for other, teams to go on. And I'm sending videos to people, responses to them. So, and then looking down my list and then adding and taking people away. So I'm comfortable doing it inside of there. Although I would like more analytics on people inside of my list. So, of these folks, and that's what I'm looking at doing, which of these folks are most actively engaged. Tell me a little bit more about all of the people in the list. So, for instance, if for us, we create a tool for people who are in marketing and looking to have a greater marketing impact, right? So are these folks marketers that are inside of this list? What's their demographic makeup? And all that's accessible because, the API on Twitter is open and we could gather that information. So I think that would be very useful to marketers. And then, have the opportunity of saying this is somebody that should be added to the list and this is somebody that should maybe be taken off that list. That's something that, we're looking at aggressively here. To answer that, I use Twitter, the native app.
Yeah, I do too. And I've actually played with a couple tools. I've used the Social Bro.
Yep.
I've used, I actually even like TweetDeck because it allows you to look through multiple accounts. So for example, I mostly live on DIY Marketers, but now as part of Bizzapalooza, I want to make sure I might be being in conversation with someone on Bizzapalooza and not be following them. That's ridiculous. If I ask them a question, they're like, well, you're not even following me, but I am.
Yeah.
Right. I love TweetDeck for that. I want to talk about one other tool that I mentioned, Social Bro. I mentioned TweetDeck. I guess that's all I'm using. If you guys have tools, definitely let us know. We got a question.
Yeah. So what types of businesses do best on Twitter in terms of lead gen and sales, and which ones do the worst? I have to say, I don't know of one that doesn't do well. Again, I really think it comes down to having that right audience. So, I was speaking to somebody, I believe, and I might have used this in an example last week on a different blab, but it's just so relevant in my head. They were in the multi-level marketing business. They used Social Quant. They had built over 10,000 followers using our tool, and they were in the fitness industry. And then, all of a sudden they changed to some type of candle, multi-level marketing, whatever it is. It had something to do with not a fitness type of, follower. So they had 10,000 followers around the fitness industry, people who were retweeting Charlene Johnson, people who were talking about CrossFit, what have you. And then all of a sudden their engagement dropped way off. And they're like, what's wrong with Social Quant or tool? It's not working. And, it took me a while to dive in and look at it. But then I was like, well, because you're tweeting about freaking candles all day and you have an audience of 10,000 people that are interested in fitness. So, to that point, to the question and why I bring that up is that I just think it's real important that you have the relevant followers. If you have relevant followers or are producing content and engaging around those followers, I don't know, and maybe somebody can, prove me wrong. I haven't seen it not work in something. So again, I used it, I told you, for a local cleaning company. I have a good friend and she's an OBGYN. I've helped her on Twitter. I have, other friends who are podcasters who do real well in driving traffic, and they're building the right audience. And then the content that they share is towards that audience. And then when that audience comes to visit the website, it matches who they are. So I think if you align that all up, there's really not a business that I don't think can't do well, because there's 300 million people on Twitter. So everybody, the audience is on there. It's just a matter of finding them and then sharing the right content with them. And then most importantly, really engaging with them, right? We can automate a lot of stuff, but I think you can't automate engagement.
Completely agree. So Tim's asking, are there any tools for consolidating, sorting, and selecting Twitter lists? Wow. There was one I had looked at. Is it follower? Not follower one. Flitter. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Manage Flitter, maybe?
Yeah.
I have a list management tool. Yep. Donna says Manage Flitter.
Yep.
That's the one I've seen. And there are a couple other ones, but I think that's the one. But you know what? You can get this now. You can export your Twitter list, I think, as a CSV.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can import it back again.
So I don't know why. Again, for me, it's when I'm inside of my list, I'm just adding and subtracting as I go along. I guess I could see, how some folks could get it unmanageable if they're just constantly adding to it. Back to the point where they were saying before, trying to keep it under 100 folks. I think if you just have lists with, 10, and again, we mentioned that tool in the chat last week, IFTT, if this, then that, so, I can have, the tool that anytime that somebody mentions, Mike Coella, my Twitter handle, that they're added to a Twitter list. And, I think this was, I forget, it was somebody from Post Planner that wrote about it, saying, hey, anytime your name's mentioned, add them to a list and call it the awesome list, right? But if you're mentioned a lot on Twitter, right, you're going to get to the point that that list will be capped because you can only add up to 5,000 people. And back to her point before, the list becomes unmanageable at that standpoint. But it's a good way to get in front of folks, right? So anytime that somebody mentions a competitor of ours, they're added to our Twitter list, right? So now, bam, Social Quant's in front of them. So, it's an opportunity to see if they'll engage back with us. So I'm automating that. But from me using it for a list to help my business, I can't use those lists.
Yeah, so there's Tim asking that question. Any way to prune, and then as Mike was saying, I think he's been doing it manually, right? Correct. Pruning, exporting, and edited back. Yeah, exactly, right? So there's so many interesting things that you can do, for sure. So we talked a lot about Twitter lists. We talked about IFTT. Thank you, Donna, for bringing that up. We talked about tools. I'm going to go back to my little question list, Mike.
And if anybody wants to jump in, because, I'm happy to, if somebody wants to.
Jump in. Donna, did you want to jump in? If you want to jump in, Donna, you had talked about it. Get in on the seat. I've got an open seat, at least one. I don't see why I don't have two open seats. Maybe because I'm using it for question and answer. Let's talk about trends on Twitter, right? And I don't mean trends like what's trending. I really want to talk about what are your thoughts about it's going to the 10,000 character limit? Is that a good thing or a bad thing for you?
I'd be interested because right now it's all, nobody knows for a fact what it's going to look like, right? So is it going to be where, we click to expand? And if we're clicking to expand at that point and I don't have to leave the native app from a marketer, that would make me, a little bit nervous, right? Because, depending upon what data I get. So if somebody, like right now, I can tell if somebody expands the tweet, right, inside of your analytics. But if they... I like people coming back to my website, right? Because then I can, share other information, possibly grab their email. But with the 10,000, I'm not stressed out about it. I would just be interested to see the way that, they show it to us. But I think it's okay.
All right, Expert Mike. I don't know. Donna tried to come in. I clicked on accept. And she disappeared.
And maybe you don't have it locked, right?
Not have it locked. No. I don't know. Am I missing something?
Yeah, and she's saying if it clicks to expand, I'm okay with it, and I agree with you. It's we'll just have to see what they do with it, right? I can tell you from a DM standpoint, since they've expanded it, I've personally seen more spam inside of my, direct messages.
Agreed.
So I think, possibly you might see the same outside. But again, that's why I think it's so important, how many of us are spending our time in our newsfeed, or how many of us are jumping into, lists or using advanced search and looking for discussions, like when there's conferences, for instance, I'll jump in and look at a conference hashtag and, try having, a conversation with folks if I'm not at the conference. And a lot of times, you can find great people to prospect with, right? So for us, folks that attended Digital Marketers Traffic and Conversion Summit conference, which was out in San Diego, I believe, the beginning of February, that was a great audience for us of folks that would be, opportunities to use our tool. So I was constantly looking at folks who were sharing content from there, and even for folks who were sharing it worldwide that weren't at the conference, and started conversations with those folks. So, there's just so many opportunities on Twitter.
I think I think you make such a great point about that, is to piggyback on top of conferences and, just get into conversation. And that actually brings up a question that Mama Milky Roxy had, right? She said she's not having as much success on Twitter as she does in Instagram. But then she also says she has an arts magazine business that she's trying to get off the ground, right? So I think you really almost need to watch this recording, because in the beginning, Mike really talked about targeting a specific audience, and he gave that great example of the folks who were in the fitness niche, and then the candles. I think that's exactly right. And maybe your magazine is much more, it's just better in pictures, although Twitter has some great images. You want to talk a little bit about that, how to use images on Twitter?
Yeah, and I think, the image sides, I don't know if Dave is still here with us, but, Dave wrote a great post, guest post for Social Quant about the images and, changes. And, I think it's, I can tell you, oh, there he is. So if, Dave, why don't you try jumping in here? Because if you can, maybe he can kind of.
You can let him in. Because to let him in. I tried to let Donna. She says, I was kicked out when trying to call in too. So Tim got kicked out and Donna got kicked out.
Try jumping in, Dave, and let's see. But either way, the post, and I'll try to find it maybe in a moment here and share it in the notes. But I can tell you, when we share images, we definitely see, much more engagement. And thus, if you go to my personal profile, you'll see that almost every tweet that I have is either going to have an image or it's going to have, a collage of the images. So I'll include 3 or 4 images. I'll also do video a lot of times. And let's see.
Oh, see if you can let him in. Can you let him in? Maybe it'll work for you.
Let's see if this goes. And
I don't know why it's kicking people out. All right. Okay. Donna, if you come in, you can try to come in too, and Mike will click and let you in. Hey, Dave. Nice to meet you.
Hey, sorry about the background. Didn't expect you blabbing today, but how's everybody doing?
I know. Doing great. It's sunny and warm in Cleveland today. Where are you at, David?
I'm in Tampa here with Mike.
Oh, you guys are all together there. Awesome.
Well.
Nice. What were you going to ask, Dave? Oh, images.
Images. And I'm finding the blog post. If you wanted to share just kind of like the cliff notes of that blog post, because I've already thought that you nailed it with that.
Oh, well, I mean, when they changed the images, unfortunately, it only changed on the desktop version. Mobile is still the same way. And so when you use some of these techniques, you're going to notice that they can get a little funky on mobile because it's basically taking the middle part of that 2-to-1 ratio. But on desktop, we tried out a lot of different things, like posting an entire infographic right in there. It becomes real tall and thin, but it stands out. Mm-hmm. You were not seeing that stuff on Twitter before. And so, using the bigger square images, they just stand out better. And as they were rolling out and people hadn't seen that stuff before, I noticed an increase in engagement by just, like I said, standing out. And while we're talking about images, I don't know, I had to mute you guys for a while, and I don't know if you talked about this already, but tagging people in those images.
Definitely.
Huge deal. I know that Mike could probably tell you more than me, but.
No, that's awesome. And, talk about features I would love to see is my problem sometimes is when I want to tag someone and then I'm like, oh, like let's say they wrote an article or something. I mean, it's a whole 5-minute escapade to go find their Twitter, tag them with the article, or if there's multiple people. So sometimes I feel like I bail on that. I have to actually take time when I'm curating content to make sure that I've got all the people I want tagged. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't have everybody.
Well, and
ID.
That's another great use for Twitter lists. If you're consistently tagging the same people, or if you've got a subject and you've got a list based around that subject, head over to that list and then you find the people tagged.
Yes, Great tip. Great tip. So I want to welcome Donna. Hey, Donna Cravata.
Hi,
Hey, Donna.
good to be here. I love what you're saying.
Donna is a master user of social for PR. She's one of my favorite PR people because, in my opinion, she totally does it right. She doesn't like blindly pitch stuff. Talk about a little bit about your process, Donna, and maybe what some of your Twitter power techniques are.
I do very much the same thing that Mike does. Is I find the journalists that either my content or my clients' content are relevant for their audience, and I start to engage with them. And journalists actually love it because it saves them an enormous amount of time, and it keeps their inboxes free of spammy emails. And it's a great way to build a relationship and really see what they're thinking about, what they're talking about. They might be working on one article, but starting to gather research, 2 or 3 articles down the road, and you can kind of get an advanced view of what their calendar looks like. And I have a client that was on Fox and Friends this past weekend for, I think, the 20th time, and she's booked herself. And it's all happened from building the relationships with journalists on using Twitter. And I teach them all to create private media lists.
Awesome. That's
great.
great.
Very, very much the same thing. And just to communicate and listen. The listening part is so important, and it's the part that most people forget to do.
How do you listen, Donna?
I use Hootsuite mostly, and I want to check out Social Quant. I've not used it yet, and I set up my streams based on my lists, my influencers, competitors, hashtags. We also encourage our clients to create their own hashtags if it makes sense to do that, and then incorporate it with hashtags that are already being used to introduce their hashtag into the conversation. And just to always lead with giving, always lead with offering something before you ask for something. Because so many people just use it as this enormous broadcasting tool to scream out what they're doing and what they want. But if you lead with just offering to be a solution or a support in some way, that relationship grows pretty quickly. And to keep it small, you don't need 40 or 50,000 followers to have an impact, particularly if you have a really small business. So to keep your expectations in alignment with what you need and build in that way, so you can just, you could just create this very targeted audience. And that's the other thing the media likes when they come to see you, and they see that your audience is targeted and in alignment with their audience. It's a way for them to grow their audience. So they really like to see that as well.
I love that. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about Social Quant. Okay, one of the things, and I have Social Quant running on 2 accounts and love it. I love the organic nature of it. But the one thing that I know is important to you, Mike and David, are you using Social Quant? I'm assuming that you are. Yes?
It looks like he fell off.
Did you ask me?
Yep, he's good.
Oh, no, I just had some feedback for a second. Did you ask me on Social Quant? Yes, I am.
Okay, so my question, David, is how are you leveraging these new followers? What is your process? So you get all these new, you're following people, you have new people following you. What's your process for that? For really building engagement, right? Because it's not just about building followers. I know we're not just committed to that. It's about engaging with people.
Oh, yeah, and it's so fantastic for that because, like Mike said, when you get these new followers, they're going to come and they're going to check out your bio. They're going to check out your pinned tweet. I've got a lot, what I think is a strong bio, and I've got some personal information that tends to start conversations lighthearted, and I'll do it the same way backwards. Can y'all hear me okay?
There's something in addition.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm
We
here.
seem to have lost,
I'm getting feedback
Ivana and
from
Mike.
somewhere.
Okay.
Do you got me?
Okay.
Yep.
I see you, Mike.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, as these new followers are coming in, it's an opportunity for me to do the same thing, check them out, and if I see something of interest, ask a question, start a conversation. It just ups all of that so much, and just naturally my engagement on the things that I'm tweeting. So yeah, it's a great way. As the new followers are coming in, if I see someone who's consistently tweeting great content on a certain subject, they go on a list. Basically, all the stuff we've been talking about, Social Quant makes it easier for me, I think.
What is it that's the easiest for you, Mike? How does Social Quant make it easier for you?
Well, for me, obviously, I mentioned conferences before, right? So, if I want to, so Social Media Examiner, SMMW 16 is happening in April. It's going to be a huge conference. It's going to trend probably a good part of that weekend on Twitter, because thousands of people will be there tweeting about it. People will be joining in worldwide about the event. So for me, what I'll do is, I'll go into my dashboard and I'll eliminate pretty much all of the keywords that I focus on, and I'll just, keep SMMW16 as the keyword that I want to follow. So now anytime that somebody goes out and mentions social media, marketing world as it's taking place live, my, Social Quant's going to go. We're going to look at that individual. We're going to run them through a filter, because we'll hear them say, for instance, David just mentioned that tweet. So we're going to run David through a filter to make sure that in all of other, David's tweets, he's not talking about maybe other things that might be deemed inappropriate, pornography, racism, whatever. If he is, sorry, David, you're out. But I already know David. He's a great guy. He's not doing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to, initiate a follow, and we're going to see if David follows us back. But the good thing is now is that is a very relevant follower for me, right? So I do that all the time when I see big events going on. Like right now, I'm testing out South by Southwest to see if that's really my audience. I believe some of the folks there that are chatting about it are, but I'm very active in doing it that way. People that follow Kim Garst or follow Ian Cleary or follow Steve Dotto or Michael Stelzner, they're going to be interested in my, what we offer. So I'll use that also as, their Twitter handles as keywords. So anytime that somebody's mentioned, again, we run them through a filter. If they pass the filter, we initiate a follow. Those are very relevant followers. Now, for me, followers is a vanity metric, right? I don't want folks just using Social Quant to say, I only want to, I want 10,000, 100,000 followers. I get that all the time. How fast can I get 100,000 followers or 10,000? It's like, what are you selling on Twitter? What are you looking to do? Because at the end of the day, yes, we want to engage. We want to be human. We want to, meet with folks. But we all have, a reason, a business behind it, right? And if we're on Twitter to have a great marketing impact, there's got to be, that second part to it. So we build the relationship. What are we looking at from there? I know if I have very relevant followers, that the content that I share, people are going to then interact with that content. And from there, that's the other part. So there's content marketing. Everybody talks about good content. Very few people talk about the marketing side of it, which is highly important, because you can produce a good piece of content. If you have no followers or no tribe, nobody's going to see that good piece of content. So you've got, it goes together. So for us, I'm looking at my analytics constantly and saying, as I use this group of keywords, how much is my engagement going up as I get more followers? Because if my followers go up, but my engagement doesn't change, well, it did me no good, right? So I have folks sometimes that are always saying, well, they'll use very broad words, like the word mom. I had a discussion with a blogger this morning. She has the word mom as one of her keywords. And she's like, well, there's so many people that use that keyword, I'm going to get a ton of followers. And I said, well, you're right, you're going to. But that doesn't do you any good, because they could be using, oh, I miss my mom. Like I haven't talked to my mom in a while. When, majority of people, on Twitter, they're using it for just, talking about what's going on in their life. That's not the type of follower you want. And now, it did you no good. So to me, it's the relevancy. I look at my Twitter analytics, make sure my engagement's going up. And, that's what I try to preach. So let me just share a real life example. John Jantz, Duct Tape Marketing, he learned through using our tool that he had always used the word small business owner and his marketing. So when you went to his website, it said small business. But he learned through our analytics that, he had also been using the word entrepreneur. And he learned that the word entrepreneur was actually not only getting him more followers, but more engagement. So now when you look at his marketing, he's changed a little bit. He has the word, small business owners and entrepreneurs in his bio and on his website. So he's taking that data, and that's where I think is so important is that, yes, we're getting folks followers, but if you take that data and say, these are the keywords of the types of folks that are interacting with me, and now start using those keywords in other parts of your marketing. As somebody here before brought up hashtags. I think hashtags are real important, right? So this weekend, I was part of an expert roundup. I don't even, I forget what it was on, but a few of the experts in there had shared it. Some of them who have bigger audiences than me. But when I shared it, I used 2 hashtags, relevant hashtags. One of them was hashtag content marketing. It had something like 20 retweets, 30, favorites. It did really well, mine. And that actually 2 of the people that were mentioned in the post reached out to me and said, hey, I'm doing an expert roundup. Can I have you in it? So now I'm getting into there too. Why I used a hashtag, but why did I use content marketing? Because I know through my Twitter analytics that I get a ton of followers. Of my 40,000+, I have 2,000 people that have followed me because of the word content marketing. So when I use content marketing now in my tweets, they're more likely to engage with it. Make sense?
Absolutely. And I hope you're getting lots of good tips, Mama Milky Roxy, because these are awesome. And I'm so glad I'm recording this because this is something, Mike, I get this with you all the time. You were on viral chat. I had to go back like the next day because you and I both know you and I are not evening people.
No. Morning person. I wish they did a chat at 6 a.m.
I know, right? Exactly. That would be us, 6 a.m. But so, yeah, the next day at 6 a.m, I'm going through that stream and I'm like, oh my God, this is such a great tip. So this is all kinds of good stuff, things you should be doing, but aren't. So very, very good.
Yeah, and to Mama Milky Roxy, I'd be interested in, if you want to contact me afterwards, actually tomorrow, anytime in the morning, just, Mike Koala is my Twitter handle, and then hit me up and then we could jump on a Skype or something. But I'd be interested to look at your Instagram feed and then see if you're using the same hashtags. I'd be interested to see in which ones are actually getting engagement on Instagram. And are you A/B, just answer now, are you A/B testing? So like if you use a set of hashtags, are you noticing any change in clicks on your link on Instagram? Because there's a lot of auto tools that will favorite if you're mentioning, like, for instance, fitness or whatever you're doing, mommy blogger or whatever it is. And then they might favorite, but they might not actually be clicking and coming back to a website. Which is real important. So I'd be interested to see that, and I can look at that with you if you want, and then tie it into Twitter to see why that isn't working on Twitter.
Okay. Tim is calling again.
All right.
Give him that. Why don't you do it, because you've had better, although I was able to bring Donna in.
Yeah, and did you knock me out? Because I don't see him. I see show callers. All right, hold on. There we go. Accept. You should be able to join.
Work. We lost Dave, but that's okay. Oh my God. I don't know why this is not working for you, Tim. I'm very sad. He wants to talk about analytics. I don't know, Tim. Don't know why it's not working. Clearly, I lack social skills. I don't know what kind of skills you lack in, Tim, but it is just not happening for you. He says it just blinks as if there's something else to do, but neither of us has anything to do, right?
No, he's been accepted, so it could be something on his side. Maybe refresh and try. One other person's calling in right now. Let's try that. And accept.
Let's try them. I'm letting you do it.
Did, so we'll see. And yep, they're on.
It's you, Tim.
Yeah, refresh if you can, Tim. Maybe that's it.
We've got Akkad. Say your name.
Yeah, Akkad Media Group. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
We don't see you. We just see black. Is that on purpose? Okay. What's your question? Oh, is your camera covered? Possibly. What's your question, Akkad?
Well, I just want to know, how do you get started on Twitter? If you, for the guys listening out there, and we do social media marketing as well as a company. So what do you guys recommend for someone who just started an account? How do they get the first, let's say, 10 to 50 followers? If you don't have an audience to begin with? That's always been difficult, for me and for my clients. So what's the strategies you guys recommend to anyone?
Well, yeah, I would start off by, and everybody uses this word, and, it drives me crazy, but knowing the avatar of who it is that you're trying to connect with. And then once you know who that avatar is, saying who would that avatar, who are the bloggers that they would read, who are the podcasts that they would be listening to, what are the magazines that they read, who are the influencers. So you list that all out. Now go find those people, the podcasters on Twitter, go, find their Twitter handles, go find the Twitter handles of the bloggers, of the influencers, of the magazines, get all of that, and now start listening to those conversations and engaging in those conversations. Because if they already have your audience of who, that is, and you start engaging with those folks, and you have going back to the very basics, what we spoke about in the beginning, having a good Twitter cover, a good profile picture. I know we all care about our logo because we spend, a lot of money on it, but I'm really a big fan of putting our mug shots on it so people know who we are. Put your personal profile there, have a good bio, and have a good pinned tweet that talks to the pain point of who that avatar is. If you do all of that and now start engaging with people where your audience is, you will build followers. It's just, engage with them, message them, reply with them, and then follow them. And I will tell you that on average, 10 to 20% of those people will automatically follow you back if you did all of the first part right. So you have to be, fishing in the right pond where the fish are. But if you're in that right pond, 10 to 20% of those people, fact, will follow you back. If you're really good, and this is where the superstars do really well on Twitter, is that, if you've got really, really good content, you will have 20 to 30% of those people follow you back. And then, it's just a matter of having a following strategy, due to Twitter's ratio limits of how many you can follow to following. You do have to have an unfollow strategy. So you can do that manually, or you can use another tool out there to do that. But if you follow that and do that over a 30-day period, you're going to see, an increase. You'll see easily in the first 30 days, you should see 250 to 500 good quality followers. And then if you continue that strategy, either doing it manually or using a tool like Social Quant, either way, you will build a following, but you have to go to the analytics and make sure you're showing an increase in engagement, increase in retweets, increase in favorites, because if you're not, you're fishing in the wrong pond and getting the wrong followers, or you're sharing garbage content. So you got to fix one of those. And, I'm going to assume everybody shares good content. Share good content. Check out your Twitter analytics. If you start seeing an increase, that's a good thing.
And I know, Mike, you're the pro, but I've just got to say to people, and whenever we're at these tweet chats, I actually wrote a post about this, 3 annoying things people do on Twitter. I don't know what your feeling about this is, but, don't spam people with "thank you for following me." That's empty and vapid content. Ask them like a question, but that would mean that you would have to go look at their profile, click on some of their tweets, maybe go check out their blog, find a question to ask them. Especially in the very beginning, this is where really great engagement comes from, rather than doing these automated responses, whether they're direct messages. Don't be greedy to drive people to links. Instead, I love the idea of the pinned tweet. Put your pinned tweet up there. People will, see it, and they can download it or share it or whatever. But don't be too desperate, right? It's like you're in a club. You don't want to be too desperate. Then people run away from you. That's not fun.
I agree. Hey,
Whoop.
What happened there? Okay.
You dropped.
Yeah, but I think, like you have that all the time. And I again, automation done creatively can work, right? So I forget who does with Brian Fanzo at 4 o'clock. Who's in his partner that does it with him? SB Biz Hour, Small Biz Hour. It's a great blab also. I think they do a great job. But she was talking once about the creative ways of using it. And, I think it's not creative when instantly I get, thanks for following me. Tell me about yourself. And then you see that they're not even following you. And you go to their Twitter profile and you look through their tweets and you see that they've sent that same message to 1,000 people. That's, not going to do you any good. So, I agree with you.
Yeah, you really, honestly, and especially if you're trying to connect with influencers, oftentimes they get really annoyed because think about how your tweet or message lands in their inbox. Think about how it lands for them. Imagine whatever you're sending, there are probably thousands more just like yours, right? So the best way to stand out is to actually get into a conversation. It doesn't even have to be some big conversation. Somebody followed me. I looked on their profile. It said magician. And I was like, magician?
Yeah.
Are you a real magician or are you talking about like social media magician? He's like, no, I'm a real magician. I'm like, that is cool. So that was a lot of fun. We got into a whole conversation about magic and if it's a hobby or if it's a business that he's doing or whatever. So it doesn't have to be all business stuff.
I just wanted to pop in because I had an automatic direct message the other day that I absolutely loved. It was from one of those blowout bars where you get your hair blown out, and they offered a free blowout. So then you got on their list, and from the list they had you like the Facebook page, and it was done. I mean, I knew exactly what they were doing, but they were offering a service that was $40 for free, and they created personal engagement. So it was a really good example about how somebody with a product can create a relationship out of that, rather than just saying, "Hey, now come follow me on Facebook," even though I'm not going to engage with you at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great point. Let's wind it up with one last question that Mama Milky Roxy asks, and then we're going to tie up our session with any last final thoughts from our expert Twitter guru god, Mike. She says, how can you avoid giving that spammy feeling?
How can I avoid to promote your online store? My store lacks views as I worry I may spam. Well, I can say that Twitter drove me over 7 figures for a fact for my office supply store. I had my largest online order, which was $27,000 from a conversation I had through social listening on Twitter. I heard somebody who was in Staples having a terrible experience. They couldn't get their questions answered. So, we jumped in, said, we've got a relationship with the manufacturer. If you give us, 20 minutes, let us call over there. We'll get this answered for you. And, you can either call us or would you like, us to call you? And, they gave us their phone number happily. We answered, got the questions answered, and had a $27,000 order. I had Gary Vaynerchuk place, just under $10,000 in orders from social listening and hearing that VaynerMedia was moving offices, and jumped in and offered Gary the opportunity to get it actually at cost, because I love Gary Vaynerchuk and I think he deserved it. And here's what's kind of funny: as I offered Gary everything at our cost, and he put me in touch with his brother AJ. We gave AJ what the cost was of everything, and he said he'd be back in touch with us. And a couple of days later, one of my managers came in because I looked at any order that was $2,000 or greater to make sure it wasn't fraud. And in came this one order, and then an hour later, another one, another one an hour later. And that day, multiple $2,000+ orders came in from VaynerMedia. They never used our discount we were going to give them. They just ended up ordering from us. So I still don't know to this day why he did that, but it was all from a conversation on Twitter. So to that point, social listening, that works phenomenally. So if you know whoever that, whatever your online store sells, I don't know what it is, start engaging. Again, back to what I said earlier, fishing in the right pond. If you're in the right pond, people are going to interact and come over. And I've seen people sell everything online, and it all works on Twitter, but you have to have that right audience. You have to be in the right pond and be sharing good content that makes them want to come over to your store. And then when they hit your store, you've got to cover the basics of everything that a good website should when people, visit that site. Again, if you connect with me tomorrow, happy to take a look and, offer, 10 minutes of quick thoughts on what I would do. Cause I love, online selling. I think it works, on Twitter tremendously well.
And I will tell you, Mama Milky, Roxy, I have talked to Mike. That's actually how we got to this point. So I got Social Quant. I had some questions. Mike spent an hour with me going over the finer points that he's actually just shared with you guys right here. So that was awesome. So Mike, what is the one thing everyone should leave here? What do you want to say before we depart?
I love to give. So just if people, I know I move very fast. My mind's moving a million miles an hour, and I have 1,000 messages coming across my computer. So here's the thing. If I wasn't clear on something and you have questions, just message me on Twitter, Mike Koala, or email me. And you can just email me, mike@socialquant.net. I'd love everybody on this to obviously check out socialquant.net. If we make sense for you, great. Or if you just have questions on it, connect with me. But more importantly, I really think Twitter is a great tool for every business owner that's looking to have a great marketing impact. It's easy to do. It's virtually free. And it can have huge benefits for all of our businesses. So if you're still unclear on how you can utilize Twitter, connect with me and I will share with you how it can work individually for you and your business. And thank you for having me on. This was awesome.
This was awesome. Thank you, Mike. This is just a great topic. And I just love seeing you wherever you are. I always learn so much. Thank you all for joining us today. And we are just going to wrap up Bizapalooza Blab. Catch us here again, probably next Monday. I'm liking Monday. So catch us again next week. We'll talk to you soon. Take care, Mike.
Take care. Be good.